Chapter 5. Why did these things always happen to Aven? And why was Bruno Bernard in the vicinity when they did? Fancy seeing you here, Tripp. Haven't seen you around at school. Did something happen to you? Bruno said as he approached. Aven had turned back to face the screen, though he imagined the smuggest grin spreading on Bruno's face. Someone kicked Aven's chair right before two boots came to rest beside his head. Unable to endure any more abuse, Aven jumped to his feet. Bruno was sitting right behind his chair. Jack Mandel, Bruno's old friend, sat in the adjacent seat. By now, Aven had no pain. The painkiller had done its job. In fact, it had worked wonders. But unfortunately, it couldn't do a thing to improve his patience. He had zero tolerance for turds invading his space. You know what happened to me, Bernard? Aven answered in the same patronizing tone Bruno had used on him. You did. You're the one who caused this injury. Bruno feigned innocence by placing his open hand over his chest. Moi? I think you're imagining things, Tripp. I did nothing of the sort. You did this all to yourself? Luke rested his hand on Aven's shoulder. Come on, let's move further down. He glared at Bruno. It stinks around here. Bruno bounced to his feet. You better watch what you say, Comitte, or the same accident that happened to Tripp could happen to you. He leaned in closer to add, maybe something even worse. Luke stood his ground. I'm not afraid of you. Neither am I, Bernard. We aren't going to move. We were here first. You and Jack should move. Aven couldn't believe he just said those words. He thought he didn't have it in him. Was the painkiller the cause of his shocking bravery? Or was it because Luke was beside him? The two of them together were a force to reckon with. Bruno was about to argue back when Nat chimed in. Yeah, Bruno, get lost. Jack stood and grabbed Bruno's arm. Come on, man. Don't start a fight in here. We're going to get kicked out. I want to see the movie. This is the last day it's showing. Bruno huffed. Fine. You win for now. But we're not finished. He stormed to the back of the auditorium along with Jack. Bruno continued to observe them. It was quite unnerving. Nice guy, Veronica scoffed. Yeah, that he is, Aven replied, sitting back down just as the others retook their seats. He caused your injury? Veronica asked. Yep, but I don't want to talk about it. He's ruined enough of this evening. When is the movie going to start? The upcoming movie ad should have started by now, Luke pointed out. Nat turned to look up at the open window to the projection room. Well, I see the projectionist. No way, she gasped. It's Theresa Moore. Aven turned to glance up as well, but couldn't turn completely around to get a good look. So he stood up instead. Yeah, it's Theresa. Did you know she works here? Luke asked. No, Aven answered. Who is Theresa Moore? Veronica inquired. She goes to school with us, but she's also my neighbor, Aven added. They had been neighbors ever since they were young kids, though Theresa and her family were reclusive. They didn't mingle much with the rest of the neighborhood. Come to think of it, neither did his family. Their neighborhood was the kind of environment where everyone kept to themselves. Although Aven had not spoken often to Theresa, he did like her. He found her cute. He'd even thought of asking her out once, but chickened out when he noticed how overly protective and scary-looking her dad was when he came to school one day to reprimand Bruno for bullying her. Come on, start the movie, moron, Bruno shouted. I don't have all night, you know. He shut up for a little over a minute before continuing his mockery. Do you even know what you're doing? Or are you too stupid to understand? Anger churned in Aven's veins. He wanted to shut the douchebag's mouth. It was obvious this was Theresa's first night handling the job of projectionist. He stood and shuffled sideways to the end of the row. Where are you going? Luke asked. I'm going to make Bruno shut up. He didn't wait around for Luke to argue. He started to march up the stairs. He got up halfway when the carpeted stair under his shoes began to tremble. It quickly escalated to the point Aven lost his footing and fell backwards, hitting his head on the metal railing. He lost consciousness instantly.
Chapter 6. Theresa's gaze fleeted across the room while everything around her shook chaotically. She tried to look for shelter, anywhere she could be safe of falling debris. But there wasn't any place she could see. Perhaps there'd be more protection in the corridor rather than in here where there was sharp-edged machinery completely surrounding her. All she had to do was make her way outside without falling onto a machine or having part of the ceiling or wall collapsing on her, injuring her. She braced herself against the nearest projector, using it as support as she forged forward. She didn't make it past 3 feet when the trembling intensified and a substantial section of the roof came down. The sound it made as it broke off had her ducking instinctively, covering her head with her hands. The fallen part of the structure crashed above her head onto the projector and the metal shelving unit beside her. It created a temporary dome above her, shielding her until it crumbled with the force of gravity and vibrations. As it did, the projector that refused to work earlier began to hum. She could hear music playing. Apparently, the movie had started to play then. A little too late. It didn't really matter anymore. She doubted there was anyone left in the auditorium below. They'd probably all run out of there looking for cover by now, which was something she should be doing as well if she wanted to make it out of there unscathed. But the path in front of her was no longer clear. The floor had cracked open and more pieces of the ceiling and walls had collapsed. It would be a perilous track to cross, but staying still was far more dangerous. Deciding to sprint as fast and as carefully as she could be, she took off. She almost tripped twice, twisting her ankle, but she finally made it to the door. She jimmied the doorknob and tried to push the door open. It barely budged. Something was wedged against it. She slammed her shoulder against it. It hardly moved, though shooting pain traveled down and up her arm, numbing her hand. She recoiled in pain as the floor under her feet settled. The quake had seemingly ended. She should have felt somewhat relieved, but she wasn't because she was stuck in the chaos. She screamed through the minuscule crack in the doorway, "Help me. I'm trapped in here." No one replied. She doubted anyone was left in the building. They'd probably all escaped. And even if someone was still inside, they wouldn't be able to hear her up here. Most of the rooms in the building were soundproofed. Warm tears streamed down her cheeks. No one was coming to her rescue. Who knew how long she'd be stuck in here before anyone came looking for her? Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, the lights suddenly went out. Pitch darkness smothered her, making her gasp in terror.